the beginning of this course, I introduced you to Martin Seligman's PERMA model of flourishing. He believes 5 elements contribute to well-being: positive emotion, engagement, relationships, meaning, and accomplishments. And we've already looked at positive emotion and relationships in the context of workplace well-being, and we'll discuss meaning in the next lecture. Now I'd like to focus on engagement and accomplishment or achievement. Engagement is participating in an activity that entirely absorbs you into the present moment, giving you a sense of energized focus. Achievement is the sense of accomplishment and fulfillment you experience when you put forth effort toward a goal. Engagement and achievement both boost our well-being and our productivity. Let's see how. Engagement comes from directing our full attention to a task or an activity. When we're completely engaged in something, we experience flow, which is a mental state that occurs when you're so absorbed by an activity that you're completely immersed in the moment. Have you ever sat down to do something and suddenly realized that hours have passed? What were you doing? How often do you have an experience like that? This is what happens when people are in a state of flow. Athletes describe it as being in the zone. Everything just clicks, and they feel like they can do no wrong. They're achieving personal bests, yet their performance feels effortless. Flow is a state of consciousness where we feel our best and perform our best. The concept of flow was introduced by Mihail Csikszentmihalyi. As a child living in Europe during World War II, he observed how people were suffering, and he became curious about happiness. Where does it come from? And what makes a life worth living? Several years later, he happened to be at a ski resort in Switzerland and heard a lecture by the renowned psychologist Carl Jung. Intrigued by what he heard, he decided to move to the United States to study psychology. In the mid-1970s, after earning his PhD from the University of Chicago, Csikszentmihalyi began doing research on creativity. In one of his early studies, he became fascinated observing painters who were so immersed in what they were doing that they were oblivious to everything around them. This led him to interview artists, athletes, and musicians in order to better understand these intrinsically motivating experiences. Why did people choose to do an activity just for the sake of doing it, not for any external reward? The people he interviewed often described these moments of optimal experience, saying the work just flowed out of them without effort. And that's when he started using a state of flow to describe these experiences. His research revealed that flow experiences contribute positively to both performance and well-being. When we experience flow, we lose our sense of self, forgetting about our worries and concerns. Our sense of time is distorted. The experience is intrinsically rewarding, and our performance soars. We now know, thanks to more recent studies using brain scans, that when someone is in a state of flow, there is decreased activity in the prefrontal cortex. This is the area of the brain responsible for higher cognitive functions, such as self-reflective consciousness, working memory, and temporal integration. This temporary inactivation of the prefrontal area may trigger these feelings of distortion of time, loss of self-consciousness, and loss of our inner critic. It may also help us to be more creative by enabling the implicit mind to take over, which allows different brain areas to communicate freely. Another way to think about it is that we all have limited attention capacity. Our minds can only attend to a certain amount of information at one time. When we're hyper-focused on a task, all of our attention is consumed by it. So we lose awareness of other things, not noticing if we're hungry or tired or how much time has passed. There are a number of reasons why you as a leader should be interested in flow. Csikszentmihalyi believes flow is the most powerful source of intrinsic motivation. A flow is interesting because people often say that they're so wrapped up in the moment that they don't notice how they're feeling. The actual state of flow is void of emotion. Yet, on reflection, people report these situations as being really enjoyable. Csikszentmihalyi once designed a study to examine the impact that not experiencing flow can have on our psychological well-being. He and his colleagues asked study participants to identify all the activities they undertook because they enjoyed them, not because they had to do them. Then for 2 days, they instructed everyone not to engage in any of the activities they had identified. After just 48 hours, participants were complaining of things like headaches, a lack of energy, a sense of agitation, and depressed moods. Being deprived of the flow experience negatively affected their well-being. Spending more time in flow makes us happier. It also helps us to be more successful. The focus that accompanies full engagement in a task can dramatically improve performance. The flow state is intrinsically rewarding, so it motivates people to engage in an activity. And flow also enhances learning. Our bodies release several neurochemicals, including dopamine and norepinephrine, when we experience a state of flow. And these chemicals help us to learn more effectively by heightening our focus and making it easier to retain new information. Several studies have linked flow to achievement in school. Math students who experienced flow in the first half of the course performed better in the second half, after controlling for initial abilities and GPA. And 2 studies of college students found that flow predicted performance. The benefits of flow at work have also been demonstrated. In a study done by DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, military snipers who were trained while in a state of flow learned 230% faster than normal. Other studies have shown that people are 6 to 8 times more creative in flow. The same chemicals that enhance learning improve our brain's ability to connect seemingly unrelated ideas. And what about productivity? A study by McKinsey & Company tracked top executives for 10 years and concluded that they were 5 times more productive when they were in flow. So those are some good reasons for wanting to help your employees experience flow at work and to experience it more yourself. But in order to do so, you first need to understand the main conditions for achieving flow. There are 3. First, skills must be well matched to the challenge of the task. Second, people need clear goals with feedback regarding their progress. Third, distractions must be minimized or eliminated. So let's start with the importance of matching goals to abilities. When a challenge exceeds our level of skill, we become anxious and stressed. Alternatively, if the task is too easy for our skill level, we become bored and distracted. A balance between the two produces a degree of focus and satisfaction, which makes the experience enjoyable and contributes to optimal performance. People thrive on having a healthy challenge, something that stimulates them without being so difficult that it produces anxiety or so simple that it induces boredom. I sometimes experience flow when I write, but not always. And that's because not all stages of writing provide the needed balance of skill and challenge. I start writing a book chapter, for example, by gathering all the information that I may want to include. I spend time sifting through a lot of articles to find relevant studies. At this point, I'm unlikely to enter flow because the task doesn't require a lot of skill or concentration. It isn't challenging enough, so I'm easily distracted. The next phase is usually struggling to decide how to combine all the information into a coherent story. It can be hard to enter flow at this point because it can be too challenging. I get frustrated when I can't figure out the best way to structure things, so I often need a break. The sweet spot comes once I've decided on an outline and have the information I need. Then I just need to put it into words, and that's when I become completely engrossed in my writing. I know what I want to say, but it's challenging to figure out how best to say it. This is when I can completely lose track of time, and afterwards I have a wonderful feeling of accomplishment. Another reason I experience flow when I'm writing is because I have clear goals and feedback. I know what I'm trying to do, and I can see exactly how many words I've typed. Goals and feedback are important for flow. Goals give direction and structure the task. and feedback helps us adjust our performance in order to maintain the flow state. Playing sports or video games are often associated with flow because they provide both a clear goal and feedback. If you have children, you may have noticed how absorbed they can become in a video game. That's flow. Finally, it's impossible to enter a state of flow if distractions disrupt your focus. I never experience flow while I'm writing if I have my email or social media open. I know I have to shut everything else down and leave my phone in the other room. Studies show that it can take up to 20 minutes of focus before you become fully immersed in an activity. How often do you have 20 minutes of distraction-free time in the office? Not often, I bet. It's one of the most difficult obstacles to overcome in promoting flow in the workplace. But it's not impossible, as we'll see. Given the right conditions, flow is a state that everyone can access. Yet on average, people spend only 5% of their time at work in flow. What could you do to create an environment where your team members experience flow more often? A first step would be to ensure that your employees' skills match the tasks you assign them. Check in with people frequently to make sure their work is sufficiently challenging. If you find that it isn't, look for possible stretch assignments that would help them to grow and keep them challenged. If, on the other hand, they're experiencing stress because the challenge is too difficult, have a conversation about how you might help them develop the necessary skills. Maybe coaching or training is needed. Using the strategies I mentioned in our learning lecture will create an environment of trust where honest conversations can take place. People need to feel comfortable in order to talk openly about how their skills relate to their work. When you're faced with the issue of poor performance, try addressing it with a discussion of flow. You can even use the flow model to guide the conversation. Ask your employee to think about where he or she might fall on the chart. Is the challenge too difficult for his or her skill level? Or is the task too easy? Use the outcome of your discussion to modify the situation. Goals and feedback are also important, so you need to communicate your expectations and provide frequent feedback. Discussing goals and giving feedback once a year is not nearly enough. You should be having ongoing conversations so that people always know what they're trying to accomplish and what more needs to be done. This provides a direction for their engagement. Last, but certainly not least, figure out ways to help your employees minimize distractions. The fast-paced world in which we live, of multitasking and constant technological interruptions, makes entering a state of flow more challenging than ever. Talk to people about how flow can improve their well-being and their productivity. Encourage them to schedule time in their day to focus on a single task and to eliminate distractions by turning off phone notifications and shutting down email. And make sure you do the same for yourself. It can be difficult to practice what you preach here. You can't promote employee flow and also expect people to respond to emails immediately or to drop everything to attend a pop-up meeting. Think about ways that you as a leader could ensure that people have some uninterrupted time. How about scheduling meetings only at certain times of the day so that people know when they will have time to sustain their focus? Or maybe pick a morning or two each week to have no meetings. Companies that have implemented programs to promote flow at work have been successful. Primary and secondary teachers in the United Kingdom who received social support and coaching by supervisors were more likely to experience work-related flow. The support provided the conditions for flow by assuring that the teacher's skills met the demands of their work. Stefan Falk, who was the vice president for the Swedish telecommunications company Ericsson, read Csikszentmihalyi's book on flow and creativity and became convinced that flow was the path to higher productivity. The company made changes based on the principles of flow. They gave their employees clearer goals and quicker feedback, swapping the once-a-year performance reviews for meetings every couple of months. Results were so positive that the company incorporated the changes in all of their offices around the world. Stefan then moved to the Swedish transportation company Green Cargo. And there he designed an even more comprehensive program to foster flow. Line managers were trained to identify employee strengths. They then met regularly with employees to set goals based on the ideal level of challenge and to provide timely feedback. A year after implementing the program, the government-owned company was profitable for the first time in 120 years. So it's certainly worth your while to invest in practices and policies that promote flow for your employees. The opportunity to fully engage in activities will contribute to their happiness and their productivity. Another way to boost your employees' well-being and success is to ensure that they experience a sense of achievement. We're going to look at two ways in which you can do this. One is to make sure that people have the opportunity to use their strengths at work. This will increase the likelihood that they achieve their goals. The other is to facilitate progress, which will contribute to your employees' ongoing sense of accomplishment. Each of us has unique talents or strengths. When we have the opportunity to use them, we experience higher levels of engagement and achievement. Strengths are things that we're good at and enjoy doing. They influence our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors. Studies show that people who use their strengths more are happier, experience less stress, and are more satisfied with their lives. They have higher levels of energy and lower risk of heart disease. Employees who have the chance to use their strengths are 6 times more likely to be engaged at work, 8% more productive, and 15% less likely to quit their jobs. They also have higher customer satisfaction scores. Our greatest opportunities for growth come from developing our strengths. Investing in our strengths has a significantly bigger impact than putting forth comparable efforts to improve weaknesses. For example, when a group of high school students participated in speed reading classes, those who were the fastest readers before taking the class improved their reading abilities significantly more than did the average readers. After training, average students increased their words per minute by 66%. Not bad, but the above average readers increased the number of words they read per minute by 828%. Despite the positive benefits of using strengths at work, only 20% of people around the world have the opportunity to do what they do best each day in their current jobs. Most companies focus on fixing weaknesses rather than building strengths. Does this sound familiar in your workplace? If it does, you're certainly not alone. Our negativity bias makes it more likely that we notice what's going wrong. We focus on client complaints or missed deadlines. Of course, problems like these must be addressed. But the issue is that we're so busy attending to problems that we fail to notice what people are doing well. Strengths-based leadership shifts the focus away from weaknesses to identify what people do well and figure out how to let them do more of it. The first step is to identify your employees' strengths. There are 4 cues that you can use to spot the strengths of others: enjoyment, ease, energy, and excellence. Experiences that bring about positive emotions often point to a strength. We typically enjoy doing what we're good at. Another clue to someone's strengths is the ease with which they can do something. If something requires one of our natural talents, we usually pick it up pretty quickly. When someone really excels at something, you can be pretty sure they're using a strength. Repeated patterns of successful performance are most likely to occur when using a natural talent. But probably the biggest difference between using a strength and using a weakness is that exercising our strengths energizes us, while using a weakness drains us. So talk to your employees to find out which tasks they enjoy most. Observe people while they're working, looking for things like rapid learning, high energy, or consistently great performance. There are also online assessments that can be used to identify strengths. The VIA Survey of Character Strengths is a free questionnaire that was created by Martin Seligman and Chris Peterson to measure 24 character strengths. The Gallup organization has an assessment called the Clifton Strengths Finder that measures 34 signature strengths. Once you've identified people's strengths, the next step in strengths-based leadership is to make sure that your employees have the opportunity to use their strengths as often as possible. Start by making strengths a part of your daily conversations. Have workshops so that people can learn more about their own strengths and the strengths of their colleagues. Encourage people to include their strengths as part of their email signature, like I do, or to display them near their workstation. Start meetings by asking everyone to give an example of how they recently applied one of their strengths. One of the most valuable things you can do is to work with your employees to structure their roles so that they can make the best use of their talents. Jobs are rarely designed based on an employee's unique combination of strengths. So leaders need to work with them to modify their roles so that they can play to their strengths. One of the best ways to ensure that everyone has a chance to apply their strengths often is to use a team approach to strengths-based leadership. When work is designed in teams, tasks can be allocated to team members on the basis of their strengths. People who are more creative or good at problem solving can be tasked with brainstorming solutions to a particular challenge, while those who are especially disciplined and responsible can tackle a last-minute deadline. Based on the research Gallup scientists have done on strengths, individuals are typically not well-rounded. Some of us are more strategic. Others are better at managing relationships. Some are good at getting things done, and others are skilled at influencing people. Teams of individuals are needed to make sure that all these different roles are realized. Knowing the strengths of your team members will help you to assign the right tasks to the right person. A study of over 80 IT employees compared the project performance of different teams based on whether the projects met budget, schedule, and quality standards. They found that the projects led by managers who scored in the top quartile for focusing on employee strengths outperformed other projects by 50%. It's also important to help employees build their strengths by providing feedback and developmental opportunities. When giving feedback, point out the specific strengths you've seen people using. When you mention what they've done well, try to highlight one of their strengths and how you've noticed them applying it. During performance reviews, ask people to think about how they've used their strengths in order to achieve their goals. If there's some goals that they failed to meet, have them reflect on ways they might apply their strengths in order to improve their performance. Now, obviously, areas of weakness should be discussed if they're critical to performance, but try to spend 80% of feedback discussions focusing on strengths or what's working well, and 20% addressing weaknesses or problems. Spending too much time focused on weaknesses undermines people's confidence, and it's counterproductive. As I mentioned before, everyone's greatest potential for improvement comes from developing their strengths. Ask people to look at their goals and consider how they could use their strengths to accomplish them. Also identify training opportunities or new assignments that will help people build one or more of their strengths. When weaknesses are causing performance problems, strengths-based leaders try to reshape the role to better fit the employee's unique talents. They also encourage employees to find support from someone who has the needed strengths. Complementary partnerships let everyone do more of what they do best. A study of over 20,000 employees in 29 countries found that leaders who focused on employee strengths during performance reviews saw subsequent performance improve 36%. The performance of employees whose leaders focused on weaknesses declined 27%. Making sure that your employees are aware of their strengths and giving them the opportunity to use them more at work will boost engagement and achievement. Another way to make sure your employees experience a sense of achievement is to support their progress towards goals. Making progress makes us happy, giving us a sense of purpose and competence. Teresa Amabila and her husband Stephen Kramer were interested in learning about people's inner work lives, or how they think about their work. They collected nearly 12,000 diary entries from 238 employees in 7 companies. One of their biggest findings was how strongly people were impacted by whether or not projects moved forward each day. Small wins had a surprisingly big impact on joy and engagement, while small setbacks had a surprisingly big negative effect. When people reported their best days, 76% of those days involved progress, and only 13% included setbacks. Likewise, when they reported their worst days, progress happened only 25% of those days, while 67% of them involved setbacks. Even minor accomplishments give us the sense that we're making progress, which motivates us to keep going. In a study by Dan Ariely at Duke, participants were asked to build characters from Lego's Bionicle series. They were paid $2 for the first Bionicle they built and decreasing amounts for each subsequent one. One group's creations were stored under the table to be disassembled at the end of the experiment, while the other group's Bionicles were disassembled in front of them as soon as they'd been built. The first group made 10 Bionicles on average. The second group quit after making an average of only 7. For the first group, seeing the progress they were making motivated them to persist for better performance. As a leader, there are many things you can do to help your employees make progress. Start by looking for any barriers to progress that you could try to remove. Obstacles could be anything from a lack of clear goals to irrelevant tasks to an unhelpful coworker. Eliminating obstacles that cause setbacks is especially important because of our negativity bias. A single setback has twice the impact on people's emotions as making progress. As with everything else, we pay more attention to bad than to good. Once you've addressed possible barriers, you can now look for ways to actively facilitate progress. Ask your team if they have access to the resources they need to succeed. Help them find information they might be lacking. Offer to brainstorm ways forward if they're stuck. Give them encouragement. People need support to make progress. And make sure to point out the progress that people are making. Celebrate small wins. Reflect on the progress being made by your team at weekly meetings. Encourage people to take a few minutes at the end of each day to list their accomplishments, and you do the same. Like the 3 good things exercise increases gratitude, this simple strategy helps us to notice our progress. Even on bad days, if we make an effort to look for it, we will surely find some small way in which we moved forward. Reminding your team why the work they're doing is important will give them an even greater sense of accomplishment. The more meaningful the work is perceived to be, the more making progress matters. The power of progress comes in small steps. All people need is a sense of steady forward momentum toward a goal. The sense of achievement gained from making progress will make everyone feel good and will motivate them to keep working. We've covered 3 factors that contribute to engagement and achievement: flow, strengths, and progress. Helping your employees to experience flow at work will enhance their well-being and their performance. Make sure there's a match between the challenge of their tasks and their skills. Give them clear goals and feedback, and help them find periods of time to work without interruptions. Your employees will thrive if they have the chance to do what they do best every day. Create a strengths-based culture where everyone knows their own strengths and the strengths of their colleagues. Put strengths at the center of conversations, feedback, performance reviews, and developmental opportunities so that everyone has a chance to use their natural talents. Finally, ensure that your employees experience the sense of accomplishment that comes from making progress. Consistently work to remove obstacles, facilitate forward momentum, and celebrate all the small wins.